On Thanksgiving Day, my son, who's a millionaire now, came to visit me and casually asked, "So, did you like the lake house I got you, Mom?" I froze. I answered him, "What house? I never received anything." My daughter-in-law, the one who's always been a little too clever, calmly walked over. "I'm so glad you're here, honey. Keep reading my story to the end and tell me what city you're watching from, so I know how far this has reached." I never imagined that a simple question on Thanksgiving would shatter everything I thought my life was. For 2 years, I'd been breaking my back to stretch the little I earned cleaning offices, rationing my blood pressure medication, and making do with the same torn coat through 2 freezing winters. But I kept telling myself it was temporary, that things would get better eventually. Alex, my son, had built a business from the ground up. At 35, he was running a tech consulting firm with over 200 employees. I was proud, even though we barely spoke anymore, just quick calls about board meetings or work dinners. Ever since his dad died 3 years ago, Alex buried himself in his work, and I understood. Grief hits everyone differently. That Thanksgiving morning, the house felt different. I'd spent hours cooking all his favorites, even if it meant I wouldn't eat well for a week. My tiny kitchen was overflowing with pots and pans, but I just wanted everything to be perfect. I hadn't seen him in person in 4 months. When Alex walked through the door, I was struck by how expensive everything he wore was. The watch, the shoes, even his sweater looked like it cost more than my rent. Behind him was Valerie, his wife of 3 years. She wore a light-colored coat that looked like it was straight out of a catalog, her blonde hair perfectly styled despite the horrible wind outside. "Mom, it smells delicious," Alex said, giving me a quick hug before helping Valerie with her coat. She smiled at me, that smile she always uses but that never quite reaches her eyes. We sat at the table, and I listened to Alex talk about expanding his company to the West Coast. Valerie would chime in now and then, talking about her latest trip to Europe and the renovations on their house. I just nodded and smiled, though inside, every word was a reminder of how far his life was from mine. Then, as I was serving the pumpkin pie, Alex leaned back and smiled. "Mom, there's something I've been meaning to ask you." I put down the pie knife and looked at him, my full attention on him. "How are you enjoying the lake house I got you 2 years ago? You've always loved being near the water." His words hit me like a ton of bricks. I stared at him, my mouth hanging slightly open, trying to process what he'd said. The lake house. I felt my heart pound in my chest as a strange confusion washed over me. "What lake house, son? I haven't received any house." Alex's smile faded a little. He glanced quickly at Valerie, who sat perfectly still. "The house on Hidden Lake. I put it in your name for your birthday 2 years ago. You don't remember?" I shook my head slowly, already feeling dizzy. "Alex, of course I'd remember if someone gave me a house. I've never gotten anything like that. Are you sure you're not mistaken?" Valerie shot up from her chair, her napkin falling to the floor. "Oh, I just remembered something," she said, her voice a little higher than usual. "I have to make a call about an appointment tomorrow. Excuse me." She walked straight to the kitchen, pulling her phone from her coat pocket, but there was something in the way she moved that felt off. An urgency that twisted my stomach in knots. Alex's brow was now deeply furrowed. His businessman's mind was clearly trying to piece together a puzzle. "Mom, that can't be right. I had my assistant handle all the paperwork personally. The deed should have arrived by mail, and monthly maintenance payments were set up." My legs trembled. "What monthly payments?" "The $1,500 I've been sending you every month to help with your expenses. My assistant told me you were receiving everything without any issues." The whole room seemed to tilt. $1,500 a month for 2 years. That was $36,000. More than enough to have changed my life, to buy my medication, fix my car, to not have to count every penny at the grocery store. I gripped the edge of the table. "Alex, I swear to you, I never saw a single cent of those payments. I've been struggling to afford my blood pressure pills. Last month, I had to choose between buying food and paying the electric bill." The color drained from Alex's face. He stood up abruptly, the chair scraping against the floor. "That's impossible. I have receipts, transfer records. Everything is documented." From the kitchen, we could hear Valerie's voice, low but rushed, though I couldn't make out the words. My hands started to shake as the weight of it all came crashing down on me. "Show me," I whispered. "Show me the papers." Alex already had his phone out, scrolling through his emails with growing desperation. I have everything at home, copies of the deed, the payment confirmations. Mom, if you haven't been getting this money, then who has? We both turned toward the kitchen at the same time. Valerie's voice had gone quiet. The silence was thick, heavy with what felt like guilt. I stood up on shaky legs and walked to the doorway. Valerie was standing with her back to us, phone still to her ear, but she wasn't talking anymore. When she heard our footsteps, she spun around, her face flushed. "Everything okay?" Alex asked, but his tone had changed. It was the voice he used at work when he suspected someone was lying to him. Valerie's smile looked forced. "Of course, I was just confirming dinner for tomorrow," but I could see it clearly now, the guilt written all over her face, the way she couldn't meet my eyes, how she fiddled with her ring, as if it were burning her skin. "Valerie," Alex said slowly, "do you know anything about the paperwork for the lake house? You helped coordinate things with my assistant back then." The silence was long, stretching into an eternity. Valerie opened her mouth, then closed it, no sound coming out. In that moment, looking at her face, I knew, somehow, she had taken what was mine. The Thanksgiving I had worked so hard to make special was about to become the day my family fell apart. Not a sound could be heard in my little kitchen. Valerie just stood there in the doorway, her hands clenched so tight her knuckles were white. Alex was looking at her with an expression I'd never seen on him before, a mix of confusion and a suspicion that was growing by the second. "Valerie," I said quietly, my voice firmer than I felt, "where is my lake house?" She swallowed hard, her eyes darting between Alex and me. It must be a misunderstanding. Maybe the mail lost the documents, or there was an error with the bank. But as she spoke, I could see the lie forming in her eyes. After 15 years working as a janitor, sweeping offices in the dead of night, you learn how to read people. When no one notices you, you see and hear more than you're supposed to. Because everyone talks like you're part of the furniture. Valerie was lying, and she was bad at it. Alex took out his phone again. "I'm calling Rebecca, my assistant. She handled all of this personally." "No, wait," Valerie blurted out, stepping forward quickly. "Maybe we should discuss this in private first. Your mom has been through enough, and I don't want to upset her more if this turns out to be some silly mix-up." I felt something cold and thick rise in my chest, a rage I could barely contain. "Upset me more? I've been eating saltine, crackers and beans for dinner most nights, while you've been showing off designer clothes and traveling through Europe." But I held my ground. "Valerie, honey, I think we're past the point of worrying about upsetting me. I want to know where my house is." Alex was already dialing. Within seconds, a woman's voice was on the other end. "Rebecca, it's Alex. I need you to pull up the records for the lake house I bought for my mother 2 years ago." There was a moment of silence. Then we heard her more clearly as Alex put the call on speaker. "Of course, Mr. Duran. The property at 1247 Hidden Lake Avenue. The deed was transferred to a Margaret King on November 15th, 2 years ago. I have copies of all the signed documents." My heart was hammering in my chest. That was my name, mine, on the paperwork. But I had never signed a thing. "And the monthly payments?" Alex asked. "All processed as you instructed. $1,500 on the first of each month to the account we were given. In the name of Margaret King. Routing number ending in 4782. I felt the blood drain from my face. "I don't have an account ending in 4782. Mine ends in 9156. Alex's eyes locked onto Valerie. "Rebecca, can you give me the full account number?" As Rebecca read it aloud, I watched Valerie's face begin to crumble. "It wasn't my account. It wasn't even close." "Rebecca," Alex said, his voice so low it was frightening. "Who gave you that bank information?" "Your wife, sir. Mrs. Duran called me in December 2 years ago and said there had been a change to your mother's banking details. She gave me the new account and routing numbers and asked that we update the file." The phone trembled slightly in Alex's hand. Valerie let out a small, choked sound from the back of her throat. "And the deed?" Alex continued. "Where was it sent?" "To the address Mrs. Duran provided. Let me check. 847 Ash Street, apartment to B." I had never lived on Ash Street. I've been in the same little house for 10 years. Alex hung up, and the silence that followed was brutal. When he turned to look at Valerie, his face was a blank mask, and that, somehow, was scarier than if he'd been furious. "Explain," he said. without raising his voice. Valerie's composure completely shattered. Tears started streaming down her face, but they weren't tears of guilt. They were tears of pure fear. Alex, you have to understand. My parents were about to lose their house. They're getting older, and my dad's hospital bills were bankrupting them. I just borrowed the money. I was going to pay it back. Borrowed, I muttered. You mean you stole it? No, Valerie cried. I was going to return it. I just needed some time. And the lake house, you weren't even using it. My family needed a place to stay while they got back on their feet. I felt something inside my chest break. I wasn't using it. Valerie, I've been working double shifts to pay for my medication. I've been eating 1 meal a day just to make my groceries last. I haven't turned the heat above 60 degrees because I can't afford the bill. Alex looked at her as if she were a stranger. Valerie, my mother could have died. What would you have done if something serious happened and she couldn't afford treatment? But nothing did happen, Valerie replied, desperate. She's fine. She's healthy. My father has diabetes and a heart condition. He needed the money more. Her words struck me like a slap. Fine. Healthy. My mind flashed to all the sleepless nights, my chest tight with stress, wondering how I'd afford my next prescription. The times I stood in the grocery store with a calculator, putting items back because I couldn't afford them. Where is my house now? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Valerie wiped her nose with the back of her hand. Her expensive makeup smeared. My parents are living there, and my brother's family too. They've been putting work into it, making improvements. With my money, Alex said, his voice flat. Valerie nodded silently, defeated. I sank into a chair, a bone-deep exhaustion washing over me. For 2 years, I told myself Alex didn't visit often because he was busy, that his success meant he no longer had to worry about me. I was proud of his independence, even as I was barely surviving on my own. But all this time, he thought he had taken care of me, that I was safe and wanted for nothing. Mom, Alex said, his voice cracking, I'm so sorry. I really thought you were okay. I thought you had everything you needed. I looked at him, this man who had fought so hard for a better life, and I saw the little boy who swore he'd take care of me when he grew up. He had tried, but the woman he trusted most had failed us both. I asked Valerie, how much did you take from me? She was quiet for a long time. Everything, she finally said, her voice almost inaudible. $36 and the house, which was easily worth another $200,000. Valerie's family had been living like royalty on the money that was meant to keep me out of poverty. Alex stood up slowly, every movement deliberate. Valerie, pack your bags. I want you out of my house tonight. Alex, please, she begged, reaching for him. We can fix this. I'll pay your mother back. I swear. He pulled away from her touch. With what money? You haven't worked a day since we got married. Everything you have, everything your family has been using, was stolen from my mother. I watched my daughter-in-law break, and I felt nothing. Not pity, not rage, just a dry, empty hole where trust used to be. For 2 years, she had looked me right in the eye, sat at this very table, knowing full well I was struggling while her family lived a life of luxury on my dime. As Valerie's sobs echoed off the walls of my small dining room, I understood that this Thanksgiving would be etched in my memory, but not for the family reunion I had been hoping for. What would make it unforgettable was the discovery that sometimes the people with the biggest smiles are the ones hiding the ugliest secrets. After Valerie left that night, amid tears and pleas for forgiveness neither Alex nor I could give, my house didn't feel the same. It was quieter, yes, but not peaceful. The silence was filled with unanswered questions and the thick weight of a betrayal that seemed to cling to every corner. Alex wanted to call his lawyer immediately, but I asked him to wait. Not because I doubted what we had to do, but because something told me we didn't know the full extent of the damage Valerie had caused. People who steal rarely do it just once, and I had a feeling this went deeper than a house and some monthly payments. Mom, you don't have to do anything, Alex said, sitting across from me at the kitchen table, his expensive suit now wrinkled from the stressful day. Let me handle this. You've been through enough. But I shook my head. Valerie had fooled me for 2 years. I had been defenseless, unknowingly, while she stripped me of what little stability I had. Now I knew the truth, and I wasn't going to stand by while others sorted out my life. I need to see everything, I told him. Every paper, every account, everything there is. I want to understand exactly what she did to me. The next morning, after Alex went home to change and gather documents, I called in sick to work for the first time in 2 years. Mrs. Hernandez, my boss, was surprised but told me she understood when I explained it was a family emergency. If only she knew. Alex returned with boxes of files and his laptop. We spread everything out on my dining room table. The same table where Valerie had sat just hours before, playing the part of a concerned daughter-in-law while hiding her filth. The first thing we looked at was the deed to the lake house. There was my signature, clear as day, on a document I'd never seen in my life, but something was wrong. "That's not my signature," I said, pointing to it. "Look at the M in Margaret. I always make a little loop at the top, and this is just straight lines." Alex took a picture of the signature with his phone, then found an old birthday card I'd signed for him last year. The differences were subtle, but they were obvious once you knew what to look for. "She forged your signature," he said, his voice hard and filled with a contained rage. We kept digging. The bank statements showed the monthly payments going into an account that was supposedly in my name, but with a bank I'd never done business with. Someone had opened an account using my information. "I need to see that account," I said. Alex called the bank, but they wouldn't give him any information over the phone since the account wasn't in his name, so we went there together. My hands were shaking as I walked into the marble lobby of Central Bank, holding my driver's license and my social security card. The account had been opened 2 years and 1 month ago, just a few weeks before the first payment was supposedly sent. The address on file was 847 Ash Street, apartment 2B. The same one Rebecca had mentioned. The phone number wasn't mine either. "Ma'am," the bank officer said, frowning as she looked at her screen, "you've never been to this branch before, have you?" "No," I answered without hesitation. "I've never set foot in here in my life." She showed us the signature card used to open the account, bearing a forged version of my name, signed by someone else. "This is a case of identity theft," she said, now visibly concerned. "You need to file a police report immediately." But we weren't done yet. Alex had brought copies of all the financial documents related to my care. And as we sat in the customer service area, a clearer picture began to form. The monthly payments were only part of it. Alex had also sent extra money for medical needs, money I never saw. $500 when he thought I needed new glasses, $800 for a supposed dental treatment, $1,000 last December as a Christmas bonus. All of it went into that fake account. "How much?" I asked, though I didn't want to know. Alex took out his phone and started calculating. The color drained from his face. $43,000. "In 2 years, she stole $43,000 from you." I felt the floor drop out from under me. $43,000 was more money than I'd ever had at one time. It was enough to have changed my life, to have given me peace of mind instead of the constant stress of scraping by. Next, we drove to 847 Ash Street. It was a rundown old building on the other side of town, with flickering neon signs and cracked concrete stairs. Apartment 2B was empty. A for rent sign hanging in the window. "She must have rented it just to have a fake address," Alex said, his jaw tight. But I was thinking about something else. "Alex, how did she get my personal information? My social security number, my date of birth, everything she needed to open that account?" He was quiet for a few seconds. "From our house, I keep copies of important documents in my home office. She would have had access to all of it." With every new discovery, the betrayal felt heavier. Valerie hadn't just seized an opportunity. She had planned this carefully, stealing my identity and my money while living under my son's roof, sitting at his table, pretending to love him. That night, as we sat in my living room, surrounded by the evidence of Valerie's crimes, Alex looked at me with tears in his eyes. "Mom, I am so sorry. I trusted her completely. It never even occurred to me to check if you were getting the money, because it was her idea to send it in the first place." That revelation hit me like a bucket of ice water. "It was her idea," Alex nodded, his expression defeated. "About 6 months after Dad passed, she told me how worried she was about you being alone, managing everything without help. She said it would be a wonderful gesture to support you with your expenses, especially since the business was doing well. She even offered to talk to Rebecca to set it all up." I closed my eyes, feeling the full weight of Valerie's deception crash down on me. She had posed as the loving daughter-in-law, concerned for her husband's mother's well-being, all while ensuring that every dollar meant for me, ended up in her family's pockets. And the lake house, the same thing. She told me you'd mentioned wanting to live near the water, that it would be good for your health and peace of mind. She helped me find the property, negotiated the price, handled all the paperwork. Valerie had manipulated my son with terrifying skill, using his love for me as a tool to control him, to steal from us both. She made him feel generous, like a good son, while she systematically stripped me of everything he was trying to give me. As Alex gathered the papers to take to his lawyer, I sat alone in the living room of my tiny apartment, looking at the walls that had become so familiar over the past 2 years. This cramped space, with its old furniture and failing air conditioner, wasn't the life I was supposed to be living. I should have been comfortable in a beautiful house by a lake, not worrying if I had enough money for my prescriptions. But no, Valerie's parents were surely in that house, drinking coffee and looking out at the water, enjoying a retirement they didn't earn, while I counted my blood pressure pills and wore secondhand clothes. Still, knowing the truth, as harsh as it was, felt like the first step towards standing on my own 2 feet again. Valerie didn't just steal my money, she stole 2 years of security, of dignity, of the peace that comes from knowing your child has your back. Tomorrow, we would start the process of getting back what was mine. But tonight, for the first time in 2 years, I went to bed knowing exactly where I stood. And that certainty, however painful, gave me strength. The morning Alex's lawyer called us with the results of his investigation, I was on my hands and knees, scrubbing the floors in the office building where I'd worked for over a decade. My knees ached against the cold tile, and my hands were raw from the cleaning chemicals. But I kept at it, because I needed every dollar I could earn. Or so I thought. Mrs. King, Mr. Davis's voice was grave when I called him back on my lunch break. We need to meet as soon as possible. What we've uncovered goes far beyond what we imagined. Alex hadn't slept properly since Thanksgiving, throwing himself into the investigation with the same fierce determination he applied to his business. But this wasn't business. This was personal, and it was tearing him apart. In the lawyer's office, we sat across from Mr. Davis as he pulled out a thick folder full of documents. Valerie didn't just steal from you, Mrs. King. She was running something akin to a fraud ring using your identity. I felt the room spin as he explained. Valerie had used my personal information to open not 1, but 3 different bank accounts at various banks. She had applied for credit cards in my name, taken out a small personal loan, and even filed fraudulent tax returns listing me as a dependent and inventing income I never earned. The IRS has been trying to contact you regarding discrepancies in your filings, Mr. Davis continued. They sent notices to a fake address. Right now, you are under investigation for tax evasion. I couldn't breathe. Tax evasion. But I've always filed my taxes honestly. We know that, but the IRS doesn't. Valerie reported that you received the money Alex sent you, money you never touched. According to them, you've been hiding income. Alex's fists were clenched. How much did she steal in total? Mr. Davis shuffled through some papers, adding the initial $43,000 to the credit card charges, the loan, and the fraudulent tax refunds. We're looking at a total of approximately $78,000. The number felt like a physical blow. $78,000. I earned $18,000 a year scrubbing floors. Valerie had stolen more than 4 years of my hard work. And the house. That's where it gets more complicated. Mr. Davis said, the property is legally in your name, Mrs. King, thanks to a forged deed. Valerie's family has been living there, making improvements with the stolen money, which has significantly increased the home's value. I thought of Valerie's parents. I'd only met them a few times at family gatherings. They seemed like decent people, a little lost in their daughter's world of luxury, but proud of the success they thought she'd achieved. Did they know where it all came from? Did they have any idea they were living in a house stolen from their son-in-law's mother? Can we get it back? Alex asked. Yes, but it will require involving the authorities. This is no longer just a civil matter. It's criminal fraud, identity theft, and tax evasion. Valerie could go to prison. I was quiet for a long moment, thinking of the woman who had sat at my table just a few days ago, crying and begging for forgiveness. She seemed sincere, but now I didn't know if that was real or just another one of her games. And her family, I asked. Her parents, her brother and his kids. Mr. Davis's expression was sympathetic but firm. They will have to vacate the property. If they can prove they were unaware the funds were stolen, They may avoid criminal charges, but they cannot keep assets purchased with illegal money. Where is Valerie now? She's staying with her parents at the lake house, Mr. Davis said. Our investigator confirmed she's been there since she left your house on Thanksgiving. So she ran straight to the people who were living off the money she stole from my mother, Alex said, his voice laced with rage. Of course she did. That afternoon, we drove to Hidden Lake. I had never seen the house that was supposed to be mine, and as we turned down the long driveway leading to it, I let out an involuntary gasp. It was beautiful, a ranch-style home with huge windows overlooking the water, surrounded by mature trees and manicured gardens. This was what Alex had dreamed of for me. A peaceful, comfortable place where I could have spent my retirement watching sunsets over the lake, instead of worrying if I could afford to eat. Valerie's father opened the door, and his face fell the moment he saw Alex and me. Oh, he murmured. We were expecting you. Valerie appeared behind him, looking smaller and younger than ever. The expensive clothes were gone, replaced by jeans and an old sweater, and her face was puffy from crying. Margaret, she said, her voice dull. I am so sorry. I looked at her, at this woman who had smiled at me through countless dinners, while, under the table, she was systematically destroying my financial security, and I felt nothing but a cold anger. Are you? I asked. Are you really sorry, Valerie? Or are you just sorry you got caught? She started crying again, but it didn't move me anymore. I'd seen those tears before. I'd even believed them, pitied her when Alex worked late, and she seemed so lonely. I never meant for it to go this far, she sobbed. It started with just taking the first payment to help my parents with their mortgage. I was going to pay it back before anyone noticed. But you didn't, Alex said, his voice like ice. You took more and more. You stole my mother's identity. You filed false tax returns. You took out credit cards in her name. That's not borrowing, Valerie. That's fraud. Valerie's mother appeared in the doorway, her face streaked with tears. We didn't know, she said, on the verge of hysteria. We thought Alex was just being generous, helping us through a rough patch. Valerie told us he insisted on buying the house for us. I looked at this older woman, probably my own age, and what I saw in her eyes was genuine shock, a real horror. She didn't know. No one knew, except Valerie. The IRS thinks I evaded taxes because of what your daughter did, I said quietly. I could go to prison because Valerie filed false returns using my name. The woman covered her mouth with her hand and gasped. Oh my God, Valerie, what have you done? But Valerie just kept crying, offering apologies and excuses that were worthless now. She had 2 years to come clean, to make it right, and instead, she chose to dig the hole deeper. Mr. Davis stepped forward with his briefcase full of legal documents. Mrs. Stevens, I'm going to need you and your family to vacate this property. Within 30 days, anything purchased with the fraudulent funds must be returned or repaid. As I watched Valerie's family begin to grasp the depth of the trouble they were in, I felt something I didn't expect. Relief, not pleasure, not revenge, just relief that the truth was finally out. The police will be here tomorrow to arrest Valerie, Mr. Davis continued. I would advise her to turn herself in. Valerie looked at Alex, her eyes desperate. Please, don't let them arrest me. I swear I'll pay it all back. I'll get a job. I'll work day and night. Valerie, Alex said. You've never worked a day in your life. You don't even know what work is. All you know how to do is take. As we were leaving the lake house, I turned back to look at it one last time. The place that should have been my home for the past 2 years, soon it would be, but for now, it felt tainted, contaminated by the knowledge of how it had been stolen from me. Mom, Alex said as we drove away. I'm going to make sure you never want for anything again. I'm going to take care of you the way I should have from the beginning. I patted his hand gently. You did take care of me, son. It's not your fault that Valerie stole what you gave me. But as we drove back to my small, cramped apartment, I knew everything was about to change. Valerie was going to face the consequences of her actions, and I was finally going to have the security and peace of mind that Alex had always wanted for me. The confrontation was over. Now, justice was coming. The divorce was finalized on a cloudy Tuesday in February, 3 months after that Thanksgiving dinner shattered everything. I sat on a bench in the courthouse next to Alex, waiting until his lawyer emerged from the courtroom with the news that Valerie had signed everything. Without a fight, She had already been sentenced to 18 months in prison for fraud and identity theft, and contesting the divorce would only mean more legal fees she couldn't afford. "It's done," Mr. Davis said, sitting down with us. "The marriage is dissolved. All assets acquired with stolen funds are being returned to their rightful owner, Mrs. King. You are now the legal and sole owner of the lake house, and all funds in the fraudulent accounts have been frozen pending full restitution." Alex let out a long breath. "And her family? They vacated the property last week. Her parents went to live with her brother for the time being and, surprisingly, they've been cooperative. I think they are genuinely appalled by what Valerie did." I felt a strange mix of relief and sadness. Relief that this nightmare was finally beginning to end, but sadness for all the collateral damage. Valerie's parents were victims too, in their own way. They lost their home, their savings, everything, because their daughter chose to steal instead of asking for help. The following weeks were a whirlwind of paperwork and arrangements. Alex devoted himself completely to setting things right, with the same focus he once reserved for building his business. He hired accountants to untangle the web of fraudulent tax returns Valerie had filed, worked with the IRS to clear my name, and oversaw every detail of transferring the lake house into my name. But the biggest change I saw was in Alex himself. The successful entrepreneur who once barely had time to call had become a son who visited every few days, who called just to check in, who insisted on taking me to my doctor's appointments and to the grocery store. "You don't have to hover over me so much, son," I told him one afternoon, as he helped me pack the few belongings I decided to keep from my old apartment. "I'm not going to disappear." He paused, folding one of my blankets, his hands still on the soft fabric. "Mom, I lost 2 years of your life because I was foolish enough to trust Valerie blindly. I'm not going to lose any more." I understood his guilt, even if I didn't think he deserved it. Valerie had been a master manipulator, using his love for me to hide her crimes. But I also understood that when trust is broken so profoundly, it's hard to rebuild, even trust in your own judgment. Moving into the lake house felt surreal. The place was beautiful, but it was heavy with the history of what had happened there. Valerie's family had taken good care of it. I couldn't deny that. The garden was lovely, the house was clean and updated, and they had even added a screened-in porch overlooking the water that I fell in love with instantly. But it felt like moving into someone else's life, not reclaiming my own. "We can change anything you want," Alex said as we walked through the rooms together. "New furniture, a different paint color, whatever it takes to make it feel like home." I appreciated the gesture, but I wasn't sure a new set of curtains could erase the image of Valerie's father sitting in that living room for 2 years, reading the newspaper while I was 50 miles away, figuring out how to make my medication last. The financial restitution was more complicated than I'd expected. The accounts Valerie opened in my name contained not only the money Alex had sent, but also funds from credit cards and a loan she had taken out. Separating what belonged to whom required forensic accounting and months of paperwork. The good news, my new financial advisor told me, is that once this is all settled, you will not only have the original funds your son sent, but also the accrued interest and additional compensation for the identity theft. We're looking at a total of around $95,000 when everything is recovered. $95,000. I had never imagined having that much money in my life. It was enough to live comfortably for years, to stop worrying about groceries or prescriptions, to finally enjoy my retirement without having to keep breaking my back. But the money didn't feel right. It burned in my hands, knowing where it came from and how it was recovered. At times, I even missed the simplicity of my old life, where at least I knew where I stood, even if it was a struggle just to get by. The hardest part was facing the town gossip. In a small community like ours, Valerie's arrest and trial were front-page news. Everyone knew what she had done, and by extension, everyone knew I was the victim of a calculated fraud. The reactions were mixed. Some people were sympathetic, offering help and expressing outrage on my behalf. Others looked at me strangely, as if they didn't quite believe I was truly in the dark. And then there were those who acted as if I should be grateful for the attention, as if being scammed was better than being invisible. The worst were the ones who acted like I'd won the lottery instead of having my identity stolen. Well, at least it all worked out in the end, a neighbor said to me with a smile. "Look at you now, living in this beautiful place on the lake." I wanted to shake her, to tell her that having your daughter-in-law steal your identity for years is not something that works out, that the house and the money came with the burden of knowing someone you trusted saw you as nothing more than an account to be drained. But I swallowed my anger and focused on rebuilding. The first night I was alone in the lake house, I sat on the screened-in porch with a cup of tea, watching the sun set over the water. The view was breathtaking, a kind of peace I'd never known, but I felt like an imposter in someone else's life. My phone rang, and I saw Alex's name. He had started calling every night since I moved in, just to make sure I was okay. "How are you feeling, Mom?" I looked out at the lake, searching for the words to describe the storm of emotions inside me. "Grateful," I finally answered, "and sad, and angry, and confused, sometimes all at once." "That sounds about right," Alex said quietly. "You know, I've been thinking about what Valerie said that last day, about how she never meant for it to go so far." I remembered her tears, her sobbing apologies. "What about it?" "Honestly, I think she was telling the truth about that part. I think it did start small, maybe impulsively, and then she didn't know how to stop. But that doesn't make it any less wrong, does it? If anything, it makes it worse. She had 1,000 chances to tell the truth, to make it right, and she chose to dig the hole deeper every time." He was right. Maybe Valerie's first act was one of desperation or impulse, but everything that followed was calculated deceit. She had looked me in the eye at every family dinner, hugged me at holidays, listened to me talk about my money troubles, all while knowing she was the cause. "I can't stop thinking about how proud she looked," I said, "when she would talk about the renovations they were doing, how beautiful they were making the house. She was proud of what they were accomplishing with my stolen money, and she wasn't just stealing from you, Mom, she was stealing from both of us. She stole the relationship we should have had these past 2 years, the peace of mind I thought I was giving you." After I hung up with Alex, I walked through the house that was finally, indisputably mine. It was beautiful, warm, everything I had ever wanted, but it would take time before it felt like home instead of a crime scene. That night, I settled into the master bedroom, in my own bed, in my own house, with enough money in the bank to live comfortably for the rest of my life. I should have felt like I'd won, but all I felt was tired. As I drifted off to sleep too, the sound of the water lapping gently against the shore. However, I realized that this exhaustion wasn't a bad thing. It was the kind of tired you feel after a long, difficult journey has finally come to an end. Tomorrow, I could start the work of turning this stolen dream into something that was truly my own. A year later, I stood on the same screened-in porch where I'd spent that first confusing night, but everything was different. The space that once felt alien now felt like a part of me. I'd replaced Valerie's family's furniture with pieces that spoke to me, filled the rooms with plants I'd chosen, and hung photos that told my real story, not someone else's. My morning routine became almost sacred. Coffee on the porch as the sun rose over the lake, watching the water change colors in the light. It was a simple luxury I never thought I'd have. This quiet, this time to just be, without the crushing weight of financial anxiety. Alex's car pulled up the driveway right on time for our weekly breakfast. It was a tradition we'd started months ago, after his initial guilt had softened into a calmer, more present form of love. We were both learning how to navigate this new relationship, one built on honesty, not the lies Valerie had sown between us. "Morning, Mom," he called out, walking in with a bag from the town bakery. "I brought you those cinnamon rolls you love." I smiled, setting 2 plates on the kitchen table. "You don't have to bring me pastries every week, son. I know how to feed myself." "I know, but I like to. Besides, Mrs. Chan at the bakery always asks about you. Half the town sees you as their favorite success story." It was true. The same people who had whispered about me during Valerie's trial now treated me with a warmth born of seeing justice served. People at the grocery store would stop me to ask how I was doing. Neighbors brought over casseroles when I first moved in, and the mailman always had a smile for me. "Did you hear anything new from the lawyer about Valerie's appeal?" I asked, as we took our usual seats. Alex shook his head. "Her public defender filed the paperwork, but Mr. Davis said it's a formality. The evidence was overwhelming, and she admitted to everything. She's going to serve her full sentence." 18 months had sounded like a short time when the judge announced it, but as the seasons changed and my life began to take shape again, I found myself thinking less about Valerie's time and more about my own. "And how does that make you feel?" Alex asked, watching my face carefully. I took a moment to really think about it. A year ago, I might have wanted Valerie to suffer more, to experience a fraction of the pain she caused me. But now, In this house, that truly felt like mine, with money in the bank and my son's full attention, revenge didn't seem as urgent as it once did. I feel like she's where she needs to be, I said finally. Not because I want her to have a hard time, but because she needs to face real consequences for what she did. Maybe prison will teach her something that her life never could. Throughout the legal process, I had learned more about Valerie's mindset than I ever wanted to know. She grew up in a family that was always struggling, always comparing themselves to those who had more. Marrying Alex gave her access to a life of luxury she'd never imagined. But apparently, that wasn't enough. She needed to feel like the provider, the one who could rescue her own family. The therapist her lawyer recommended said she has a powerful sense of entitlement. Alex had told me months ago she genuinely believed she had a right to take what she wanted, because life had never been fair to her. I'd thought about that for a long time. Life had been unfair to me, too, when I lost my husband and had to raise our son with nothing. But it never once occurred to me that my hardship gave me the right to take from someone else. Have you heard from her family? I asked. Alex nodded. Her parents moved in with an aunt in Arizona. Her brother got a job in another state. They're basically starting from scratch. I felt a pang of sympathy for them. Valerie's actions had destroyed more lives than just mine. Her parents lost their home and their savings. Her brother's children had to leave their school and their friends, all because she chose to steal instead of being honest. I've been thinking of writing them a letter, I said. Alex raised his eyebrows. Really? What would you say? That I don't blame them, that I hope they're okay. I stirred the sugar in my coffee. Valerie made her choices, but they shouldn't have to pay for them forever. We sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the lake. A family of ducks had taken up residence near the shore, and I'd made a habit of tossing them crumbs from my breakfast. These were the small pleasures I never had time to notice before, when I was living on a knife's edge, just trying to survive. I have something to tell you, Alex said finally, his tone shifting to something more serious. I looked at him, waiting. I'm seeing someone, a woman I met at a business conference. Her name is Sophia, and she's nothing like Valerie. A jolt of nervousness went through me, but I forced myself to be calm. Tell me about her. She's a forensic accountant. Actually, she investigates fraud and financial crimes. She knows the whole story with Valerie, and she's not interested in my money. She has her own successful career. I smiled. A forensic accountant. That seems fitting. Alex laughed. I knew you'd appreciate that. She's also brutally honest. On our third date, she told me I was too trusting and needed to work on my boundaries. A smart woman. When do I get to meet her? Only when you're ready. I'm not rushing this time. I'm learning to trust my own judgment again, and part of that is not seeking everyone's approval before I know how I feel. I reached across the table and squeezed his hand. I'm proud of you for taking your time, but when you're ready, I would love to meet her. After Alex left, I took my usual walk around the property. The gardens Valerie's family had planted were still thriving under my care, but I had added my own touches. A small vegetable patch with tomatoes and herbs, a reading nook under the old oak tree, a bird feeder that attracted cardinals and blue jays. The house was beginning to feel like mine in a way that had nothing to do with deeds or legal documents. It was filled with my choices, my memories, my daily rhythms, things no one could steal, fake, or control. That afternoon, I did something I'd been considering for weeks. I called my old boss at the cleaning company, Mrs. Hernandez. Hi, it's Margaret King. I'm calling to let you know that I won't be coming back to work. There was a pause. Are you all right, Margaret? You've been gone for a while now. I'm better than ever, I replied, smiling because it was true. I'm going to retire. The word felt strange in my mouth. I never thought I'd be able to retire. I always assumed I would work until my body gave out, but the money Valerie stole, and that was later returned, combined with the house and Alex's unwavering support, finally gave me the chance to stop scrubbing other people's floors and start living my own life. That evening, I sat on the porch, with a glass of wine, watching the sun paint the lake in shades of gold and rose. My phone buzzed with a text from Alex. Sophia wants to know if you like Italian food. She's thinking of cooking for you next weekend. I texted back, tell her I love Italian, but she doesn't have to impress me. I already like anyone who makes my son happy. As night fell over the water, I thought about the woman I was a year ago, tired, resilient, proud, but quietly desperate. That woman would never have believed this peace was possible, this feeling of being safe and content. Valerie took 2 years from me, but in a twisted way, her crimes also gave me something I never would have achieved on my own. They forced Alex to finally see me, to understand that I needed more than just deposits and checks. I needed his time, his attention, his real love. I also learned about my own strength. I endured the theft, the investigation, the trial, the chaos of reclaiming my name and my life. I discovered I was stronger than I knew, more resilient than I'd ever been forced to be. And I learned something about forgiveness, not for Valerie. That's something she would have to earn with a real change I may never witness, but forgiveness for myself, for trusting her lies, and for Alex, who was just as deceived as I was. As I locked up the house and climbed into bed, I felt the deep satisfaction of a day well lived and a life reclaimed. Tomorrow would bring more simple pleasures, more quiet joys, moments of peace that no one could ever steal. The lake house, which began as the scene of Valerie's crime, had become my sanctuary. The stolen money, now recovered, was my security. The son who was once manipulated was now my partner. Valerie tried to steal my future, but in the end, she only delayed it. It's mine now, in full, to live however I choose, and I choose peace. We're telling this story based on real events. The names and places have been changed to protect the identities of those involved. It's the story of a mother who sacrificed her entire life for her children and grandchildren, only to be disrespected, used, and abandoned. But when she had nothing left to lose, she rose up, and this time, she lived for herself. We don't tell this story to judge, but so that anyone listening might stop and think, how many mothers are suffering in silence inside their own homes? Now, I'm curious about you, the one listening to my story. What would you do if you were in my place? Have you ever experienced anything like this? Let me know in the comments. In the meantime, I'm leaving 2 more of the channel's favorite stories on the end screen, which will surely surprise you. Thank you for staying with me until the end.